Hi and welcome back to my workshop. This is Lucas, a violin maker in Cremona. In today's video, I'm going to be answering one of the questions I get asked the most, and that is how to become a violin maker. To approach this, I'm going to be answering the essential questions. Where can you study? How much would it cost? Would there be any opportunities afterwards? And etc. But I'm also going to be talking about the sort of mentality needed for this profession and discuss some of the challenges that you might face. Being based in Cremona, I can tell you a lot about my experience here, but there are violin makers all over the world. So in future videos, I'm going to be interviewing people who studied in some of the most famous schools abroad, and to see if we can find a different perspective. Keep in mind then that everything I'm going to say is strictly my own opinion based on the experiences that I had. So don't forget to subscribe to the channel and to give the thumbs up if you're interested in this topic and in the future interviews. Now with that said, let's get into the video. There are perhaps two main ways to learn how to be a luthier. Firstly, we have the most obvious and the longest standing way, and that is of course to learn directly from another luthier. However, this can be a very difficult option. You will have to find a maker that works in a style that you like, that will show you focus, that will do the same type of job that you enjoy, like for example if you want to do construction but they only do repairs, whose work you can respect, and you will have to find all this within an area you can be based in. Also, you wouldn't have a very broad access to multiple point of views, which is fundamental in picking your own style to make you one of the best. But let's say you've chosen an ideal maker you would love to work with. They might not always be willing or be able to take on a student. Individual violin makers are not exactly big companies. For another person to be in their workshop, they will have to meet various health and safety regulations. And the student would simply be very time consuming and expensive to train, even if they are willing to pay for private lessons or they were training to become an employee. A lot of people say that violin makers don't like sharing their secrets and information, but, and while that might be true in some cases, the truth is that teaching someone takes a lot of time, and it will probably be a year or more until that person starts being mildly productive or independent, especially if you consider that it takes most people around a year or so to make their first violin. But violin making can also be a very competitive industry to succeed in. So a teacher might also be worried that as soon as a student learns the skills, they will leave, not only profiting from the time invested in them, but also presenting some more competition in an already crowded market. Nevertheless, if the traditional way is the route you want to take, then you simply need to call or email the different violin makers in your area and ask them if you can learn from them. And if they're anything like me, in 3 to 6 months, then you're going to get an email back saying that they forgot to reply. But these are not the only traditional ways to approach the violin making world. You can start by some traditional yet unconventional ways of learning from a luthier without even having to be in his workshop. For this, there are very useful books, online blogs, and even online courses, like my one, link in description. Due to the difficulties involved with that approach, nowadays most people who want to become a luthier attend one of the famous violin making schools around the world. But then you have the question of which school to study at. Talking to other makers from various schools and discussing my own experiences here in Cremona, here are some things to consider. Oh, and speaking of learning, if you're a violinist or if you want to learn the instrument, I wanted to share with you that I recently started a new collaboration with Tonebase. They are a platform that offers unique masterclasses for violinists from world-renowned musicians, and they have a special discount deal for my followers, offering a 30% off and a 14-day trial using the code Fabroviolins. So I'm going to leave a link to that on the description below. The thing I like the most about violin making school in Cremona is that it gives everybody the opportunity to become a violin maker, even if they never held a tool in their hands before. For this reason, the school in Cremona has between 150 and 200 students enrolled in total, from which I think that only 1/3 are Italian and the rest are students from across the globe, often other European countries or South America, China, Korea and Japan. This is a very different approach to other violin making schools, where you need lots of previous experience and they therefore only admit a very small number of students, sometimes around 8 students per year. Nevertheless, the workshops in Cremona are still limited to the maximum amount of around 10 to 12 students, which means each student gets about 16 hours a week split between laboratory and varnishing. Also keep in mind that the violin making school is a third or high school. This means that there might be some 16-year-old kids sharing lessons. However, adults still make most of the people that attend the institution. The school offers a 5-year program, but it's possible to enter directly into the 3rd year if an admission exam is passed. This is an option that a lot of people go for, as usually during the first 2 years, students don't actually work on instruments. Instead, they focus on other woodworking stuff to get some tool practice. Then the 3rd year is dedicated completely to construction, and at the end of this year, then the student must decide whether to go with the construction course or the restoration one for the remaining 2 years. Even if I think that Cremona is the best place for construction and our speciality, there are some good restorers here as well. You will also have some other subjects to take, like mathematics, history and Italian. However, some of them can be avoided by the school credit system. This means that people who already have a school diploma or a university one can provide a certified copy of it, and then the school will decide whether the student can skip some of the subjects or not. The advantage of this is that you will also have extra laboratory hours if you get these credits granted. Enrollment to the violin making school usually takes place in February, but the school year doesn't start until September. It's important to keep in mind that the course is in Italian. On the website they say that a B1 level is necessary. While they're not very demanding with this, the course will only be taught in Italian, so it's recommended to learn some of the language to make the course easier. It is also one of the tests at the admission exam for the 3rd year. Other tests are design, technology of the wood and materials, some woodworking skills. They would usually ask to make something simple like a fingerboard, and the music and violin playing test. Although I have to say that they are very flexible with the violin playing skills. In fact, truth be told, a poorly played scale is what most people usually play at the exam. I could go on forever talking about the exam, so let me know in the comments if you want a video where I can go more into detail, but you can still find the basic information on the school's website, so I will put a link to it in the description below. The yearly school fees are of around 400 to 450 euros. Most students will live in a shared flat where they would also share a working space, which here can cost around 200 to 300 euros a month. If a student wanted to rent a flat and a workspace alone, it would be closest to 400–450 euros a month. Maintenance bills here, such as water, rubbish, gas, can average 100 to 200 a month. And of course you have the student essentials, like 10 euros for a mobile plan, anything for something like 100 euros more or less for a month. To help with these costs, some people get a part-time job while studying. For example, working in a restaurant during weekends or nights. It's not very easy to get one of these, but it is possible. Of course, the living conditions with that budget will not be the best, and you should expect to rent a place that's kind of falling apart. But that's the way most students do it, and I know it because it's the same way I did it. Cremona's history makes it one of the most important places in the world for violin making. It's either here or in a city nearby that the violin originated, and where the most important makers were born and used to work, such as the Amati family, Stradivari, Guarneri, Bergonzi, and many others. But even today, it's where hundreds of makers come to study and develop their craft. Life in Cremona is very simple and easy. It's a very small city and people just walk or cycle everywhere. In fact, I don't think there's a single place I can reach from the city center with a 30-minute walk, and that would be considered to be very far away. The architecture is beautiful, and even though, as with any small city, there aren't always super exciting things to do, there's a theatre for concerts, operas and ballet, an amazing auditorium where it's possible to listen to some of the old Stradivari and Matteo Guarneri instrument almost every weekend. And during the year, it's easy to come across some random concerts or music festivals in the city. Another perk of the city is the Violin Museum, which holds some amazing instruments by the old masters. For any bigger events or in case an airport is necessary to travel abroad, Milan is just an hour away with a direct train. For makers, it's also easy to find tools and wood for violin making in the city, even if not for a cheap price though. But there are some shops dedicated to luthiers around the town, and it's impossible to leave the flat without seeing an instrument or another violin maker. This is one of the reasons why I say that the most important thing is the Cremona experience rather than the school itself. As I mentioned, the Cremona school gives everyone the possibility to go, but it's not really very demanding. Almost anyone can graduate fairly easily. This means that a lot of people might finish school knowing as much as they did before they started. But then again, you also have students with years of experience working with instruments behind them, and they come here only to master the skills. So I think that the school provides a good starting point, and it allows you to meet people so that you can become immersed in the violin making world, but what really matters is how much you do outside the school. Getting a job here in Cremona after finishing school is not exactly easy. There are hundreds of active violin makers in the city. This means that as a maker, you would most likely not be overloaded with work, and as an assistant, there's not much demand, especially when some makers like myself prefer working themselves from scratch on each one of their instruments. Opportunities for assistants are made even more difficult by the health and safety regulations for hiring for violin makers here in Italy. With so few job opportunities, it also becomes more competitive, and the few jobs that are available tend to go to those experienced students who only come here to master their skills. However, and that being said, as the other hundreds of makers here demonstrate, it is not impossible to get a job as long as you're dedicated and you work hard. So we've discussed how you can learn, where you can study, and what life would be like here. But we haven't yet answered perhaps the most important question. What are some of the challenges that you might face? I think that one of the biggest challenges of becoming a violin maker is the mental strength required. At the beginning, you will always be dealing with rejection, as you're going to be showing the instrument to many musicians, and even though they will probably say they like it, most of the times they will not be buying, even if you offer it for a very low price. The truth is that the first instruments are never perfect, and if an instrument is not very good, then any price that is not extremely low is still too expensive, and people will prefer paying more for something that will last them forever. Another very mentally challenging thing is not having a boss and the fact that the process of making an instrument can be very long. Not everyone has the strength to wake up every morning and be productive without a clear objective. This can sometimes be solved by having a commission, but this is only something that happens with time and experience. You might be working for months on an instrument that you don't even know if you will be able to sell, and as the process is long, then you might not make any visible progress for days, even if the progress is there. But there are also many things about this profession that make it all worthwhile in spite of the challenges. My favorite part of this job is the job itself. Having your biggest passion as your profession is a luxury you can only dream of. I don't mind working on weekends, holidays, or extra hours because I simply enjoy it. Although I know that this can be a challenge for other people, but violin makers here work a lot. The sensation of giving life to an instrument starting from a piece of wood still feels somewhat unreal, yet the result is tangible and with a purpose and a functionality. And by the way, if you want to help support my channel while getting some nice violin making apparel such as this t-shirt or the phone case, then you can do so on my Redbubble account, to which I'm leaving a link in the description below. I hope you find the video useful. Let me know what you think. Are you interested in becoming a violin maker? Of which institutions have you heard of? Don't forget that I will be soon uploading interviews that I did with people who became violin maker and studied in different schools. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you're interested in this type of content, and you can also add me on Instagram if you want to see more violin making related stuff. Now thank you so much for watching, and until the next time.